All right, folks. Welcome into Pickaxe and Roll, brought to you by our good friends over at BetOnline. I am your host, Ryan Blackburn at NBA Blackburn on Twitter, part of the Mile High Sports Podcast Network. And I am here. I am ready. Let's go. I'm tired. I'm exhausted beyond belief from this week, but we roll. Friday is here, and the Nuggets have they've just won another basketball game and played extremely well against the Orlando Magic, a team that, holy cow, that offense is so bad for the Orlando Magic. I couldn't believe how bad they were. And it's not like they were missing a whole heck of a lot of people. I think they're missing Jalen Suggs, and I don't even know beyond who they were missing, but is what it is. Denver rolls, and Denver played really, really well in this one. Nikola Jokic played well. Michael Porter played well. Those guys led the way for Denver. We'll get into that game in the first segment, and then in the second segment, we will talk about the trade deadline, things that happened yesterday, things that didn't happen yesterday. I'll address Calvin Booth's press conference that he had in just a little bit. Was an interesting presser, kind of an awkward presser, but still interesting. And I'm glad that he did it because there was some good content that came out of it and some good answers that came out of it, I think. So we will talk about it all. I'm very curious to get your thoughts as well. Who won the trade deadline? Who did not win the trade deadline around the NBA? We'll get into all of that in just a second. But before we do, I have to pay some bills. As you guys know, the Super Game is coming up in just a little bit on Sunday, and there is plenty to like and plenty to do at BetOnline. This is the biggest betting weekend of the year here, and BetOnline, the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for sports and online betting, is here to do it. Hundreds of prop bets, MVP odds, and exclusive in-game betting. BetOnline is your ultimate game day companion, whether you're a seasoned fan or a first-time bettor. They offer you everything and more to enhance your game day experience. Visit the website today to get in on the action. BetOnline, the game starts here. Once again, I'm your host, Ryan Blackburn. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. I know I look like horrible right now, and I feel horrible just in general. So please be nice. Please be nice in the comments. I'm doing my best. I really am. Having a lot of fun doing both of these shows, Pickaxe and Locked On. It has taken a little bit of a wear on me just overall, but I am still very excited to kind of react to this with everybody. And I'm excited to see what happens and what people say. So we'll get into it. Let's get into it. But before we get into like trade stuff, let's go over the game yesterday. I know that people, and especially me, because the Calvin Booth press conference happened right before the basketball game. I was still very focused on pulling out quotes and getting a whole list of quotes that he had from that. So I missed a little bit of the beginning. But as it turns out, that game was a pretty good one. And the Nuggets handled their business extremely well. They did lose the first quarter, but the second quarter and third quarter, they absolutely rolled. And at one point, they were up by 30 against this Orlando Magic team. And the Magic just had no chance. Their offense was so bad. Without Jalen Suggs out there, you wouldn't expect him to be the most impactful piece because he's still kind of a raw offensive player, still somebody that like you're not trusting to be your point guard all the time. Cole Anthony started, and Goga Bitadze started for some reason. I'm not sure why Wendell Carter didn't start, but he didn't. And the Nuggets, they rolled. They ultimately rolled in this one. 112-90 was the score. Orlando couldn't score. Denver's defense was pretty good all the way around. Jamal Murray did not start. Julian Strawther got the first start of his career because Russell Westbrook obviously wasn't out there. And then Peyton Watson wasn't out there. So you got Zeke Naji and Hunter Tyson both getting some action. And both of those guys played pretty well as well. Pretty interesting to watch Hunter Tyson, by the way. His nickname is going to be Trigger Finger. I am going to get that one to stick because that dude shoots the basketball, and it does not matter where he is. It's crazy to watch how fast he gets up a shot when he touches the ball. Is very funny. But either way, like 3 games in a row, Michael Porter Jr. has scored 30 plus, 11 of 16 last night, 5 of 8 from 3, 3 of 5 from the line. Still a little bit of a struggle from the free throw line this season, but hopefully that continues to come up. But 30 points is nothing to sneeze at. It's the first time in his NBA career that he's had 30 plus in 3 straight games. We asked him post game if he feels like this is the stretch that he is playing the best basketball of his career, and he wouldn't really cop to that. He wouldn't really say much there. Like he said, it's only 3 games. I am shooting and playing really well right now, but there have been other times as well. And then I asked him, hey, is there a time that you look back on fondly when you think, hey, I really enjoyed playing in that moment? And he looked back at the bubble where he first became a starter for this Denver Nuggets team. He scored 30 plus twice in a row in the bubble in that kind of warm-up stretch in the regular season, right before Denver got into the playoffs officially. And then there were just a variety of other things that happened in that bubble. But the most important one for Mike was that he started, he was trusted, it was in a proper good circumstance for him because so many of the other guys had COVID, and like Torrey Craig had COVID, Jamal Murray had COVID, Gary Harris had COVID, Will Barton never showed up to the bubble for some reason. And there was just a lot of opportunity for Michael Porter for that reason. And so he took full advantage. And from then on, the Nuggets have never not started Michael Porter. So I think that's kind of a fascinating conversation. I don't know if Mike has ever not started a game in his NBA career since that moment. So let me see if I could pull that up. I guess, he didn't start in 7 of the games in 2020-21. But other than that, he has started. I'll have to go back and look at that because that's pretty funny. But either way, after this 3-game stretch of 30 plus points, Michael Porter has tied his career high in points per game. He still has he has a career high in assists per game right now. It's only 2.2. That number's dropping a little bit, but he is still shooting very efficiently. And his overall EFG percentage is just very high. It's never going to quite get back to the level that he was at like 2020-21. But it was still it's been really impressive to watch him. The shot making, the level of stuff that he is putting out there right now has been tremendous. And he just continues to, I think, validate Denver's faith in him, and specifically Calvin Booth, but like Josh Kroenke, who I heard pretty strongly caped for him and said, you know what, we're not trading Michael Porter. And I know a lot of Nuggets fans were like, don't trade Mike, don't trade Mike, don't trade Michael Porter because of the sins of everybody else on the roster. And you know what? I kind of get it. Age 26 season, yes, there are some injury concerns long-term. Right now, Michael Porter is playing the best basketball of his career, in my opinion, and he can find ways to be impactful. There are still concerns in the playoffs, and those are not going to go away until he satisfies those concerns and plays well in those moments against physical teams. But that's why this game, and Brendan Vogt and I, of course, big super fan Brendan Vogt. Just kidding, Brendan. We were talking about it and why this particular game against this particular Magic team, a very physical Magic team, why that mattered. Because he's going up against Franz Wagner, who's a very good defender. Paolo Banchero, who's a very good defender. Switching out and being guarded by Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, who you guys know is a very good defender, especially against perimeter players, perimeter shooters. So just a very impressive moment for Michael Porter, and really glad that he's having this moment. Nobody ever wanted to trade Michael Porter, like it was the only thing that Denver could seriously do if they wanted to shift things this year. And so that's why I made the argument. I'm glad that he's playing well. I'm glad that he's like, the only thing, all you want is success. All you want is to see these guys play well. And so I'm glad that it's happening. I really am. Nikola Jokic, ho-hum, 28 points, 12 assists, 10 rebounds. He grabbed that 10th rebound at the buzzer at the third quarter. And so he got that triple double, 24th triple double of his season. And I'm going to get back to that in just a bit. But 11 of 16 from the field, 2 of 4 from three, only 4 of 6 from the line. The Nuggets as a team yesterday shot 12 of 21 from the free throw line. Aaron Gordon missed 3, Michael Porter missed 2, Jokic missed 2, Christian missed his only 1, Hunter Tyson missed 1 of 2. So just not necessarily the best detail shooting performance from Denver, but they didn't have to be. Orlando was never going to score 100 points in this game, so Denver just had to get up a certain threshold. But it was impressive to watch Jokic, of course, because they were playing very physical basketball. And especially in that first quarter when nothing was really going Denver's way, Jokic was still cooking. He was still dominating. And it's just continually impressive to watch him work through things in these moments where, yeah, it's not super ideal when you're on the lineup out there with Jalen Pickett, Julian Strawther, Hunter Tyson, Zeke Naji, and Jokic. Like, pretty tough circumstances for Jokic to work through, and he still finds a way to do it. Like, his chemistry with Porter's great, with Aaron Gordon's great. Christian Brown just runs in transition every time Jokic is out there because he knows he's going to get the ball. He also cuts back door, and Jokic had like 6 assists just to Christian cutting back door and running hard. It's crazy. But just in general, like, Jokic is just such a tide lifter that even in that lineup that I just mentioned, 3 second-year players, Jalen Pickett, Julian Strawther, Hunter Tyson, and Zeke Naji, who's been in and out of the rotation for his entire career, mostly out. That's just a tremendous uplifting presence if Jokic can continue to make that group positive. Just been really awesome to see him kind of respond, because we were rightfully critical of the defense and the way that the team approached the road trip. And you look at the leaders when you look at that. It's obviously not all his fault in those situations, but he can be part of the solution. And I liked his defense for the most part. Like, there are going to be times where he just allows a layup. He allows a different angle. Maybe somebody gets an offensive rebound that they probably shouldn't have. But against the Magic, a team that competes very hard, you can understand giving up one play here, one play there, because over the course of the entire game, you're going to see Jokic make more positive plays on that end often than not. And so I'm glad that this was kind of how that worked. It was very impressive to watch him. As I mentioned, 24 triple doubles in 46 games. I did the math last night. Let me see if I have this correct. Because he's played 46 out of Denver's 53 games, I believe that they've played. Is it 53, 52? It's one of those two. Actually, you know what it is? It is 52. Because he's played that amount of games, he's on pace for 38 triple doubles because he was on pace to play about 72 games in the season. So if he plays a little bit more than that, then it's possible that he gets up over 40 triple doubles on the season. If you remember, Russell Westbrook's triple double record was 42. Wouldn't it be poetic if, with Russell Westbrook on the roster, Jokic collects 43 triple doubles this season, 44 triple doubles this season? How crazy would that be? Like, I'm not expecting it to happen, but I do think that there is a possibility that he's able to do it, that he actually makes that happen. And then that's kind of a narrative thing that if you care about the MVP, if you want to discuss different MVP points, Jokic is putting up some of the greatest numbers we've ever seen in NBA history. And I'm just very, I'm very excited to see whether he can actually do that. That would be crazy. It would be very hard for a lot of people to argue against him if he averaged a triple double, but 2, did it on the efficiency that he often does. It's just different from what Russ did during his 2017 season. And if Denver is the 2 seed, okay, this guy is complaining in the comments about a comment that I didn't delete. I don't know. sorry, bro. Like, I don't care if you're back or not. Yeah, like, look, if Jokic does what he has done and the Nuggets are a 2 seed or a 3 seed, it's just so hard to argue against an MVP case. I don't care about that as much at this point, and I don't think that most Nuggets like truly care. Like, is your life going to be worse if you feel like Jokic was slighted because Shai Gilgeous-Alexander wins it while the Thunder win 65 or 67 games? Probably not. But if it's relatively close, he might get it again. And he really seriously might deserve it again. Deserve it in 5 straight years would be crazy. That's crazy. I don't know if that's ever happened before. It probably has, at least where the people have deserved it in 5 straight games. I think LeBron, back when he, like 2009 to 2013, I think there's a large group of people that think that he deserved it in all of those years, including 2011 when he didn't get it. But all those other years he did. And like, I feel like we're watching a similar level of player, which is patently nuts. That's stupid. So been awesome. Been awesome to watch him. All right, let's take a break. Not too much to write home about for the rest of that game. Actually, I will say this before we take a break. Zeke Naji got a whole bunch of shout outs post game. He was a plus 23 in 21 minutes because he was playing great defense. Didn't have a good offensive game. He made a 3, but missed all of his other shots, and he went 1 of 7 from the field. Did get 6 rebounds, which was good, and did hustle. And like the steal and the block were very nice. And his overall level of defense on Paolo, on Franz, when he's switching out onto other folks, it is very good. So just really nice to see him continue to take advantage of this moment. And Michael Malone was extremely complimentary and said he was very happy for him that he was taking advantage of this moment. Do I think he's going to continue to play? No, I don't. When Denver's fully healthy, I think that we know what their rotation is going to be, or we're pretty darn sure what their rotation is going to be. Now, maybe there is a justification to try to open it up to 10 guys, in which case Zeke Naji playing the 4 may not be the worst idea in the world. DeAndre Jordan can play the 5, and he's actually done extremely well over the course of this entire season. But can Zeke Naji play some minutes at the backup 4 and maybe save Aaron Gordon from having to play excessive time? Sure, absolutely. So hopefully they can do that. Christian Brown also played well, 8 of 12 from the field, 16, 8, and 4, and 3. Tremendous game from him. Julian Strawther did not play well. Michael Malone came to his defense in the presser. Completely reasonable. First career start for Julian Strawther. I thought he helped the team win, but the first quarter was just so bad that it kind of shaped how people thought about it. I honestly thought that like the way that he was being guarded, it opened up things for everybody else. So credit to him for just being a threat out there. And that's so much more important sometimes than just making the shots. Like, if people care, if they have to run you off the 3-point line, if they have to account for you, it makes it so that they can't account for Jokic or they can't account for Michael Porter or send an extra body. So credit to them for figuring it out. All right, now let's take a break. When we come back, we are going to chat about whatever yesterday was and Calvin Booth's conversation with us, no trades for the Nuggets, and then we'll wrap up with where the Nuggets stand in the West. We will be right back here on Pickaxe and Roll. All right, we are back. Pickaxe and Roll, Ryan Blackburn here. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. If you're new, if you're here and you haven't been here before, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Would really, really appreciate it. Let's get into just some of the moves that happened yesterday, some of the non-moves that happened yesterday, and Calvin Booth's presser that he had right before the game. Was a very interesting, like I would say unnecessary presser. I don't think that he needed to go in front of the media and say some of the things that he said. It was kind of an awkward presser, not going to lie. But either way, like there was a lot of talk and there was a lot of chatter, and the Nuggets did try to do some things. They did try to add a backup center. That's something that he effectively said that they were trying to go get Jonas Valanciunas. They were trying to go get Chris Boucher. They were trying to go get Larry Nance Jr. Ultimately, Denver didn't have enough resources to make that happen. Part of it is because of the money that they're sending out. Zeke Nnaji, yeah, he's playing reasonably well for Denver right now, but I think a lot of teams don't necessarily care about that when they're thinking, okay, we're going to give you our guy who has a lot more flexibility and like isn't going to have a long-term contract, and you're going to give us a guy that's under contract for 4 years. That's probably not super helpful. And then the Nuggets, because of their salary cap and apron restrictions, they need to match or exceed, actually they need to exceed the amount of money that they receive by sending that out. So if Zeke Nnaji is your 5th largest salary, it just limits what you can do. And opposing teams just weren't going to take both of Zeke Nnaji and Dario Saric while also just taking on a pick swap. They think that the Nuggets are going to be pretty good in the coming years, and I don't blame them because they have Jokic. It's a bet that you can make, and it's a possibility that you can make, but I think a lot of people think that Jokic and the Nuggets are going to be probably a playoff team at the very least for the next 3 to 4 years. So sending out pick swaps like that, not necessarily super appealing for a lot of people. Like they're not going to take on a whole bunch of excessive money for the possibility of getting a better pick. It's not a guarantee. So that was the problem that Denver ran into. And they didn't also want to kind of break up the rotation. Calvin Booth said yesterday that none of the rotation guys were really up for trade. Denver, and like for that, I account for 8 guys, really 9 because they're not going to trade DeAndre Jordan. But 8 guys. You've got the 5 starters, or at least the starters going into the season: Jokic, Murray, Porter, Gordon, Christian Brown. And then Russell Westbrook wasn't getting traded. And then the real kicker was whether Peyton Watson or Julian Strawther were going to get traded. And if the answer was no, then you immediately write off all of Denver's like possible talks. Because the other young guys that they have, Jalen Pickett, Hunter Tyson, Zeke Nnaji to a degree, like there's just not as much belief that those guys are going to be like prospects that you can believe will break out and be a starter or even like a strong rotation player for a team. Again, I understand why teams were very hesitant with that. And usually in those situations, if you can't give people a young guy that they care about, you have to give them the possibility of a young guy that they can care about in the form of draft picks. And the Nuggets just don't have any. I've talked about this before. Denver effectively traded Reggie Jackson, JaMychal Green, 2 first-round picks, and 7 second-round picks for actually 3 first-round picks because they shifted up. Actually, no. That's not how it works. 2 first-round picks, 7 second-round picks for the combination of Deron Holmes, Julian Strawther, Peyton Watson, Hunter Tyson, Jalen Pickett. I might have that math off by a little bit in terms of the draft capital that they have. But when you frame it that way and you talk about what Denver has given up in terms of future flexibility to be able to make that happen, I don't know if it's been worth it. The line that really got me in when Calvin Booth was speaking, he shared a lot of stuff, and it was a very interesting conversation. Very, very interesting. Quote, "We haven't been the bank. We've been the person going to the bank and asking for a mortgage. We'd like to get out of that cycle, but we realize that Joker's time is now, and if the opportunity presents itself to use those assets to really improve our team, I think we're close on a couple of things and feeling that way this trade deadline." And so they were trying. Like they did try to give up more assets in order to get better. The problem is that the team has given up so many assets and probably miscalculated on some guys like Pickett and Tyson, for example, that it's just really difficult to put together a package that's competitive with other teams. Like Jonas Valanciunas, for example, he went for City Sissoko, who's a young prospect, probably in the range of a Jalen Pickett or Hunter Tyson, but the Washington Wizards can justify adding him to their group because he's like 19 or 20. I think Pickett's 24 or 25. Hunter Tyson's 24, somewhere around there. And so it's hard to fully justify those guys as young prospects because there's just so like they're already older. And then on top of it, the Kings were able to throw out 2 second-round picks in order to get somebody like a Jonas Valanciunas. So it was very clear which teams were going to get those guys. The Nuggets were not going to get those guys. It just wasn't ever going to happen. And I know that people are going to be pretty upset about that, like the way that happened. And look, if Denver has their current rotation and they believe that they are good enough and they prove that they are good enough, then this plan will have been validated. But going into the season and kind of understanding why the Reggie Jackson deal was bad, why giving up 3 second-round picks to move up for Deron Holmes, and kind of telegraphing to everybody, like those combination of moves where you give up 6 second-round picks to get one guy, that's pretty tough. That's one thing that Denver kind of missed out on. And I don't think that there was enough foresight to really account for the fact that Denver's rotation at that point might not be good enough. And who could have accounted for Deron Holmes not being healthy? Like nobody could have accounted for that. I don't like it tore his Achilles. Nobody would blame Calvin Booth for not accounting for that. But I also think that the way that he has assembled this roster and the way that the Nuggets have sort of put together this thing, there's so much individual pressure on each individual piece that it feels like a house of cards, that if you remove one of the cards from the stack, everything kind of comes crashing down because there's just so much pressure on each individual joint, each individual card. So it's a lot to think about. Some other quotes that Calvin Booth had in that presser. At the top of it, he said, quote, "I think the best way to describe," and he was talking about the draft strategy or the trade deadline strategy this year, it was either we had to go big or do nothing. He mentioned backup center. He talked about the Jonas Valanciunas move, but he also said, quote, "I think as long as Aaron stays healthy, Aaron Gordon, we'll be okay at backup 5, but it is a concern of mine." And rightly so, given that Aaron Gordon is a undersized 5. He is somebody who has played backup 5 for Denver in the past, but it was 2 years ago, and he wasn't dealing with multiple calf strains in the 2023 playoffs. He was very healthy, and Denver did a good job of managing his minutes that season. They're trying to do that again this year, but kind of doing it in retrospect after he has already hurt himself. I remember Michael Malone not doing a good job of managing his minutes at the beginning of the season. And he was playing 37 minutes. He was playing the backup 5. He was just doing a lot. And I think that may have hurt him initially. Now, I don't want to place all that blame at Michael Malone's feet. Like maybe Aaron wasn't ready physically. And maybe that's a problem. But there's a lot of elements. It's not just Calvin Booth. It's not just Michael Malone. It's not just Aaron Gordon or anything like that. There's a lot of reasons why things can go wrong. And they just kind of all play a part. Other things that were said, Calvin Booth on Zeke Najee's future, quote, "Well, he's here right now." Not a great sign. Quote, "He's one of the pieces that obviously we were looking at trading going out there. Because if you look at our salary sheets, there's only so many contracts outside of our main guys. So it's pretty easy to figure out what guys we were going to go out. We're going to go out if we did a trade." And he's right about that. But he's also just so brutally honest that I don't know if he's I don't know if he's doing the right thing. by being as brutally honest as he is. I understand, and I think he wants to give people what they want. He wants to give people answers. He wants to give people what they are asking for. But there's a way to do this. There's a way to be tactful and like have some like can kind of dance around some things without saying them as plainly as possible that he just has not done, that I think has made people very uncomfortable and kind of gets them into trouble a little bit. Like, for example, what he said about Julian Strother, quote, I think there's moments that are good, moments that are bad. I think defensively it's going to be a challenge for him in the playoffs right now. So hopefully he's getting playoff minute. If he's getting playoff minutes, he's humming offensively. It's not that bad. And honestly, I think it's true. I think it's very much true that Julian has to be better defensively, and like you better hope that he's on offensively because the defense is probably not ready for the playoffs. That's true. But there's a different way to say it, especially if you have to, like, if that's like a requirement for your team. So it's just very odd, very awkward. Before the press conference, he came in at like 6:40 and he just kind of sat down at the podium and we thought we were going to get going. But Nick O'Hare effectively said, we're going to wait until 6:45. So Calvin just kind of sat there for 5 minutes and we kind of sat there looking at him for 5 minutes and talking a little bit. And it was very odd. I'm surprised that they had him do that or he did that to himself. Like it was very awkward. So look, I don't think it was handled particularly well. I'm glad that he tried to go out there and address some things, but there's just not a lot that he can say that's positive, Calvin. And I don't think that it was a very positive presser as a result, just kind of awkward. And I think there's going to be a lot of questions. And one of the common sentiments that I heard from one of the reporters was that kind of have more questions going out of it than questions going into it. So it's a tough place to be. What else? Yeah, I mean, that's the explanation. I did my best to ask good questions, to ask questions that people would want to hear the answers to. And Nuggets fans, I think, have a right to hear from their general manager, from their decision makers, what went wrong, why things are the way that they are, what were the limitations, and you have the answer. You may not like the answer, and I totally understand it. Yeah, totally understand if you don't like the answer, but that is just what's happening right now. So we'll see what happens. Outside of that, yesterday, the DeAndre Hunter trade was probably the biggest move that was made yesterday. DeAndre Hunter to the Cleveland Cavaliers. Most of the big trades that were made were effectively made on Tuesday or Wednesday or obviously last Saturday with the Luka for AD trade. Not a ton of moves. The Memphis Grizzlies made a weird cost-cutting move for to sending out Marcus Smart and taking back Marvin Bagley of all people. They've liked Marvin Bagley for a while, so I'm not surprised that they did that, but just kind of an odd decision given that Smart is like he's a player that you could probably trust in the playoffs. He's just had a really bad year because he's been injured and just hasn't been up to snuff. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. Fernando asks, hey, Ryan, random question. I'm looking to go to the game in Phoenix tomorrow. Do you think anyone will be missing from the lineup or maybe just Murray? Well, you're probably not going to see Russell Westbrook. You're definitely not going to see Peyton Watson. I don't know about Murray. I think it's 50-50. Michael Malone was asked about him post-game and if he thinks that Murray will be able to play, if he hopes Murray will be able to play. And his response was, I hope for a lot of things. So not necessarily the greatest endorsement of health for Jamal Murray at this point. But Michael Malone did effectively say, like, the reason why he didn't play yesterday on the second night of a back-to-back was because the knee was just acting up. It was just not giving him, I think it was giving him too much pain. And so it'll probably calm down by Saturday. So I would guess that he plays. I just wouldn't want to lie to you and say that I know. So sure, we'll see. Like maybe he does. I would bet yes if I did have to bet, but fortunately I don't have to bet. Okay. Yeah, DeAndre Hunter trade was really the only thing. The Marcus Smart trade was odd. Are there any other trades that you guys noticed yesterday, that you saw yesterday, that you want me to discuss? Because I don't think that there were much of anything at this point for yesterday specifically. While that's kind of popping through into the comments, I want to talk about the Western Conference as a whole, and then we'll get out of here. Western Conference as a whole, I don't know if you guys noticed this, but the Nuggets are now the 3 seed in the West. Like, that's kind of wild to think about. Denver has been on a roll over the course of these last 5. The Houston Rockets have lost 5 games in a row. Not sure how that happened, but they have. They've lost 5 games in a row. The Thunder are 40-9. They're pretty good. The Memphis Grizzlies are 35-16. They are 3 losses up on the Nuggets. The Nuggets are in the 3 seed at 33-19. The Rockets are 32-19. They are right behind them. The Lakers, who continue to win games and are 8-2 in their last 10, are 30-19. They traded for Mark Williams. I don't think that happened yesterday. I think that happened on Wednesday. But their lineup looks pretty good now in terms of what they can put out there for the playoffs, and they're playing really good basketball. So it's very possible that they are in a pretty tough place. The Minnesota Timberwolves also won yesterday, and in the last 2 games, Minnesota has jumped into the 6th seed. So Denver's at the 3 seed right now. Minnesota's at the 6th seed. I got to imagine that Nuggets fans don't exactly want to see Minnesota as the first team that they face in the playoffs. That would be tough. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what it looks like and how this West continues to evolve. Is there a specific team that I think the Nuggets cannot beat in the playoffs? No. With all the trades that happened yesterday, all the trades that happened pre-trade deadline, I don't think there's a team that got so much better based off of the trades that I don't think Denver can beat them. OKC is still clearly tier 1 in the West. No other team is with them. The Nuggets are in tier 2 along with Memphis, Houston. Lakers might have jumped up there because they have Luka and LeBron. And then, I don't know, man. Minnesota's still figuring some things out. I know it doesn't feel that way, but 29-23, they're only 4 games back of where the Nuggets are right now. So they are not bad at this point. Going to be fascinating to see if they continue to get better and if the Nuggets continue to find ways. But that's going to, if that's the first round matchup for the Nuggets this year, it's going to be pretty stressful for a lot of people. I'll say that. Okay. Nothing too crazy here. Not a bunch of trades yesterday that really changed the complexion of the Western Conference. Obviously, the Lakers won for Luka. That's the long-term change in the West. But we'll see. We'll see where that continues to go. There will be more time to discuss this, more time to discuss just where the Western Conference is as a whole. This will continue to update, and I will dedicate a podcast at some point to just looking at each Western Conference team in depth and talking about their strengths and weaknesses and what Denver should be looking for in those particular matchups and potentially playoff matchups. That will have plenty of time, but that seems like a good post-All-Star break kind of conversation. So we'll get into that a little bit. Oh, here's one thing. Here's one thing I can talk about. Eddie Sell asks, Ben Simmons buyout a Nugget? No. And the reason why, the Nuggets are above the first tax apron. They cannot get a buyout guy that makes more than $12.8 million this year. So that includes Ben Simmons, that includes Bojan Bogdanovic if he gets bought out, and that, of course, includes Bruce Brown. So Bruce Brown will not be a Denver Nugget. He will not be a Denver Nugget. Actually, and Cat World Peace has been in here talking about Booth. How do you think of Booth's future in Denver? He's expiring at the end of the season. And if you ask me to be honest, I would say that it's probably more likely that he goes than that he stays. That he's let go and the Nuggets don't re-sign him, than it is that they resign him. Now, if he did what ownership told him to do and then they fail, it's not necessarily all his fault, but I think a lot of people can point to what he's done, how he's handled stuff lately, and talking about whether he should be gone or not. I'm not going to speak onto that right now. Like, there's plenty of time to talk about whether guys should be fired or not. But for now, I would obviously say that it's more likely or not than not that he goes than that he stays. So take that for what you will. All right. That's all I got. That's all I'm going to do today. Folks, I am tired. I am taking the rest of the weekend off. You will not see me again for the rest of the weekend. I do not care. The Suns game on Saturday night, Denver will play, and we'll see how they do in that one. We'll see whether they can make it happen. That is going to do it for this episode of Pickaxe and Roll, brought to you by our good friends over at BetOnline. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. Appreciate the love and support on the podcast as always, folks. Thanks for being positive. Thanks for being a collaborative community and just not like try not to be overwhelmed by stuff like this. I do as many of these things as I can solo. Yesterday, if you want the live reaction on the podcast that I did to the trade deadline stuff, I hopped on with Jake Shapiro and Jeff Morton. That was a very good conversation if you're interested in some live reaction stuff from yesterday. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button on the way out. I'll talk to you guys next week.